Welcome. So today I'm going to go over everything from Scuf, Hex Gaming, to regular PlayStation controllers, to Xbox Elite, to lesser known brands like Nagashock here that resembles Battle Beaver. And then of course we're also going to cover the PlayStation Edge controller, which, spoiler alert, I think might be the best one. So to kick things off, let's level set here. I'm not going to get into detail for every single controller, but we are going to cover some of the main differences between things like the Xbox Elite, for example, and the PlayStation controllers in general. We are going to cover them technically speaking as well. And also, if you're interested, in my next video, I will go over how to overclock your controller to have as little input delay as humanly possible on it, so that you can gain that extra advantage, that little bit of edge when you're competing in game. So that being said, let's start with our controller tier list here. First, we can go over this guy, or any Scuf really. Now this one is the FPS. This is the top of the line. I paid about 450-ish Canadian dollars for this and waited 6 weeks. This lasted me approximately 1 month. I've also got other Scuf controllers as well that pretty much like out of the box had issues, but I put them right back in the box. This is another example of a Scuf controller. This is a Scuf Impact, as you can see, with the grip here, custom buttons, so on and so forth. Also broken. Lasted me about 3 weeks, that one, and had stick drift. So to be clear, it's not that it was broken, it just had pretty severe stick drift, pretty noticeable stick drift. So I was having to put my dead zone up to like 15 for it to stop, right? It would just go to the left. Sometimes it would just flick upwards as well. So it was worse than just, you know, one directional stick drift. So that being said, I want to get Scuf out of the way right away. Scuf is not worth the money at all. I don't know why they're so popular. I understand that some people have a good experience with it. I have spent over $1,800 now on Scuf controllers in total, between the two that I just showed you, plus a bunch in the controller graveyard, which I'm thinking of framing on the wall behind me. Actually, I think that would be pretty cool. But anyways, so I've spent a lot of money on Scuf controllers. I've sent them back for repairs. I've used their warranty. It's long, it's annoying to be quite frank, and even the repaired ones that did come back had issues still, and they broke again about a week or two later. So I cannot recommend Scuf in good conscience. I cannot say anything good about Scuf. I will never buy another Scuf ever again. If you're looking for a good controller, save your money, don't get a Scuf. There are far better options that we're going to be going over throughout this video. So next, we can move on to Hex Gaming. I'm going to cover these because they're pretty good. They're a pretty good alternative. They're a bit more affordable. They've got cool designs, 4 paddles, and the paddle system is a little bit different. So if you compare this to like the Scuf FPS, you can see the difference there. So the Scufs have 4 paddles, like full-on paddles. These ones are interesting because they've got 2 paddles here, and then they've got these 2 buttons, which I kind of like, to be honest with you. I did enjoy this controller. This is still okay. It's got a little bit of stick drift, but even after about 2 years, it's actually fine. This one is kind of like my backup. If something happens to my main controller, I can always go back to that one, even though it's not perfect. It does have a slight issue here. So with these paddles, this one does not click anymore. You can hear this. Yeah, so the one on the right has no click at all anymore. So this is my slide in Call of Duty, for example. That does not click at all anymore. So it's one minor issue, but it does work. So I do want to give them credit there. It's not that it's broken, it's that the clicking is gone. I did have a bunch of Hex Gaming controllers, other ones as well. So I've got this one that I really love. Again, just showcasing the cool designs. I've got the longer stick right there, and the gold trim on pretty much everything. It's just really nice. This one does have problems. The trigger doesn't really work. These ones have the clicky triggers, as you can see, the fast trigger. Good, honestly, but broken now. So in general, what I've learned so far throughout my experience with regards to actually ordering custom controllers is the less you do to the original controller, the better it is. Another thing I learned throughout my years here is that finding a manufacturer who uses the base controller that you're looking to work with, and I'll tell you why I'm sticking to PS5 here. There's actually a technical reason for that. But sticking with a manufacturer that is actually buying PlayStation controllers at a baseline, they have Edge controllers that they are modifying, is always going to yield better results than manufacturers like Hex Gaming, for example, who have their own sort of like aftermarket third-party type of white labeled controller that isn't really coming from PlayStation, right? It's not a PlayStation product. So that being said, there are manufacturers out there that I found, like this one, that I absolutely love. This is Nagashock. Battle Beaver is another alternative, another very well-known alternative, and this is exactly like a Battle Beaver. The reason I went with Nagashock over Battle Beaver in the first place is because I heard a few horror stories about Battle Beaver's client service, customer service, basically their after-sales service, and I didn't want to deal with that. Nagashock was great. Everything is quick. You can get in touch with them by email, and they will solve any issues you have, if ever you have any. That being said, they run about the same price and they have the same kind of build. So they're buying Sony controllers and then they're modifying them. That, in my opinion, is the best recipe for success here. They have the least amount of issues possible. These are expensive controllers as well. They've got back buttons instead of paddles. I really like this. These are very premium. They come with a certificate of authenticity as well. And so there you go. And so these are pretty cool. They've got a warranty. They've got great service. Nagashock has really great customer service as well. And they've got a great website where you can actually test your controller. You can plug in and test for stick drift and all sorts of other things live on their website, and they can troubleshoot with you. So it's really cool. That being said, this is $500 Canadian, just about. So not cheap. There is an alternative, I think, that in terms of being the most cost-effective and best performing controller is going to be the best. Again, the Nagashock one, you have a lot of options for customization. I went with as little customization as possible because in general, once again, the less they touch the base controller, the better are your odds of not having any issues down the line. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. I do want to cover the Xbox Elite controller. So I did own an Xbox Elite controller. I traded it in, actually. The reason being was after doing a lot of research, I learned that Xbox controllers actually have more input delay and are not as precise as PlayStation controllers and can never get there either. So a PlayStation controller, for example, you can overclock it now to 8,000 hertz and you can have less than 0.12, I think it's 0.125 millisecond input delay, which is the least amount possible. It's basically like a mouse at that point. You cannot do that with an Xbox controller, unfortunately. So technically speaking, if you're competing in a fighting game, if you don't have a stick and you're using a controller with paddles instead, for example, in a fighting game, or you're playing Call of Duty, for example, and you want to compete at a high level using these controllers, you should stay away from Xbox controllers. Even though they're nice, even though I do like some of the sort of like quality of life things on them, and the fact that they have 4 paddles by default, the Xbox Elite Series 2 anyways, they are actually technically inferior. So I found that out. I noticed it was clunky. I was wondering why. I researched it. I realized it. I understood it. And so I traded it in. Now the controller that I'm using now is arguably the best controller on the market. And it is the PlayStation Edge controller. So you can see it has 2 paddles. So many good things about this. First of all, it's obviously a very premium controller. It feels premium, it feels hefty in your hand, it's weighty. This is a serious controller. It's made by Sony, first of all, so obviously you've got the warranty and all that goes along with that. But more than that, if you get stick drift on this controller, this entire module, this entire middle section is actually replaceable and you can purchase it separately. So you don't even have to get a new controller, you just swap that middle part out, basically the joystick module, you can swap it out entirely and fix your stick drift permanently. You don't need to have like cotton swabs and open it and start cleaning it. So that's one really cool thing about this controller, is that you can swap out the entire joystick module there and just fix your stick drift, right? Now, aside from that, you do get the 2 back paddles. An advantage that the Xbox Elite Series 2 has, obviously, is that you've got 4 paddles on it. That being said, 2 paddles should suffice. So I was used to 4 paddles. Honestly, I was just YYing. I was just switching weapons constantly, and it was probably a bad habit. You don't need it. I don't really need it using this controller. I do miss the option to do a bunch of things like reload and open a crate in Warzone, for example. Sometimes that I do notice that without having to move my thumb off the joystick. I do notice some small things like that, but all in all, this is good. Now, the only thing that would make this better, in my opinion, is if it did have 4 paddles. And it was a little bit more affordable, because this is up there in price. It is more expensive than the Xbox Elite Series controllers. In Canada, it's going to run you about $300. That being said, it is still cheaper than the Scuf FPS, right? So this one is cheaper than this one and is actually way better. The whole practicality aspect to these is that you can just go to the store and buy this. You could pick this up at Walmart. You can pick it up at anywhere, really. GameStop, whatever. Best Buy, whatever you have. But I don't know if you can see that. There are these two little buttons here. You can actually change how far you need to press the trigger by moving and sliding this thing. So you can just move it to different positions and it'll go further or not as far. So you can change the depth whether you're playing a racing game or a shooting game, for example. So this is, in my opinion, the best controller out on the market right now. There are a couple of things that I'm going to show in the next video on how to actually set it up for your PC so that these back paddles work, because it's not actually straightforward unless you have a PlayStation and you can set it up there first and then move over to your PC. You do not need the S4 Edge. There's an app called PlayStation Accessories. Again, I'm going to cover it in greater detail in the next video, along with how to actually overclock this to have as little input delay as humanly possible. So please stay tuned for that next video. So again, this reigns supreme. The only thing that would make this an S Plus controller would be having 4 paddles. Right now it's got 2, so I'm going to put it in S minus tier. Nagashock would be an easy A tier for me. This is A tier. Battle Beaver's probably A minus in my opinion. Hex Gaming is a solid B tier. These are good controllers. They're not baseline Sony, they're aftermarket type of controllers, but they're pretty solid. Honestly, for the price and the delay, the customization options, they're okay. But you're going to run into issues with them. It's about a 50-50 out of the box. You might have stick drift, or it might be perfect and it might last you a year. So that's about it. Honestly, that's my review. Please stay tuned to the next one. Please like and subscribe if this was helpful. I also do stream on Twitch very often, so please feel free to stop by and say hello. It's right below there. And I will see you in the next video. Later.